Hello, this is the Muffin here. I'm going to be trying something a little bit new. You guys will have to let me know what you think about this, but I wanted to talk about something that I think Wargaming is doing completely wrong, and that is how they're going about frontline heavy tank destroyers in the game. They're going to be removing a lot of the armor on this cupola on top. I don't know what data Wargaming has been looking at to make them think that this cupola on the E3 needs to be weakened. I think the Blitz community understands why this tank has so much armor frontally. It's because it's the only thing that has going for it. If you look at this tank, it has not very good traverse, not very good maneuverability. It's got some gun depression. I mean, not a lot, it's okay, but really the front armor of this thing is all it has going for it, and that is what makes this tank so fun. Looking at the E4, we know this tank has a very weak cupola on top. It is not hard to penetrate this thing. This thing has a turret, so of course they had to make things a little bit different with the E4 compared to E3, but after they weaken this cupola in 8.2, what is going to be the point of playing the E3 anymore? With Wargaming removing the armor on top of the cupola, it's almost like Wargaming coming out with a light tank that is super slow. It completely invalidates the tank, and it can't fulfill its role at all. The whole purpose of a light tank is to be able to get to those effective positions to spot, give your team eyes, be able to flank, being able to fulfill that role as a light tank. And if you have a slow light tank, you can't do any of that. And that is what I'm saying in regards to the E3, where how they're removing that strong point of armor, making this a very, very big weak spot, opening it up to just easily get destroyed. And this is how I play the E3, as much more of a frontline aggressor. You won't be able to do that if they weaken the cupola. You're going to have to play much more carefully, much more hidden. You're going to have to hide behind buildings. The whole reason why I'm able to do this is because frontally I'm just about invincible, unless they are able to shoot that lower plate, which I'm trying to face hug, protect myself. And if my cupola was weak, the E100 would easily be able to wipe me out just by shooting my cupola. I mean, even the E100 could load HE and still do a lot of damage to my roof. I don't even see the point of playing the E3 if the cupola is going to be really easy to penetrate. So I don't even know if I'm going to be playing the E3. As a matter of fact, I can see the E3 being one of the worst Tier 10 tank destroyers in the game after 8.2 if that cupola ends up being too easy to penetrate. I feel really sad for anyone that's grinding this tank right now, trying to get it, and have all these hopes of, oh, I want to get the E3 because of its beastly armor. And then after 8.2, there's going to be no point because everyone's going to be shooting that cupola and they're going to end up finding themselves in a position to get just absolutely wiped out. I'm really going to miss this, and I really hope that the E3 can still maintain the way that it can be played. This is going to completely change how the player base is supposed to play with these tanks. They will no longer be able to do this. They're going to have to play much more secondary, back row, and they're not going to be able to do as good of a job as like a Waffenträger or a Scorpion or an SU-130 PM. And those are meant to be more secondary, back row, support sniper type tank destroyers because they're much more maneuverable. And why play with something like this that's slow and has a big weak point on top of it? And as discussed, this is not the first time that nerfing a frontline super heavy TD has happened in World of Tanks Blitz. It also happened with the T95 where they ended up weakening, I think, some of the frontal armor, making the cupola much easier to penetrate. And you can see here, these tanks are not going to have that hard of a time penetrating me. And the T95 already struggles in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have great maneuverability. It doesn't have great traverse. Heavy tanks could basically circle of death the T95 if you're not careful with it. And I'm having to try so hard to protect myself, use this building to protect me, because I don't have the necessary armor to fulfill what I need to do as a frontline heavy tank destroyer. This Sheridan has much more maneuverability, easily able to get around me. I am able to bounce a couple rounds right there. Not saying the T95 is absolutely weak, but in my opinion, I think the T95 is a little weaker frontally than it should be. Now the T28 has actually received some buffs, which is really needed. That has really helped it be able to fulfill that role. They did strengthen the lower plate, and I'm trying to put myself in that frontal position. Now, against tier 7s, the T28 is really hard to penetrate. Unfortunately, when you start coming across tier 8, using premium ammo, tier 9s, it makes it very easy to cut through this tank and get penetrated. I really think that when it comes to frontline tank destroyers, these things should be very difficult to penetrate from all tiers. Like the T28, for example, and I'm not necessarily saying make the sides and rear of this tank impenetrable or really hard. Of course, keep it slow, keep the sides weak, keep the rears weak. That's what helps keep it balanced. What I'm saying is make the front of the tank really difficult to penetrate. Make everything else really easy, like the sides and the rear, but the entire front make it very hard. You can still make the cupolas on top a little weak, but not very weak. But I really think that is where Wargaming is going wrong when incorporating and having these tanks in the game, and especially when removing their armor, because these tanks cannot fulfill their role, and Wargaming is taking that away. So when it comes to these frontline super heavy tank destroyers, after 8.2 they won't be able to be played the same. People are going to have to play much more cautiously, and this is primarily with the E3. There's no changes really happening to the T95 or the T28, but the people playing the E3 are going to have to play a bit more cautiously. So those are just my thoughts on how frontline super heavy tank destroyers should be in the game. Is they should have that very, very strong armor. They should not be removing that armor on top of the E3. That is how they fulfill their purpose. Hope you guys enjoy this vid. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You guys stay cool and keep tanking.